Dear students, welcome to English classes. This is episode 2 on 2 Dear. I told you in my previous episode on the same topic that we will be reading this story in detail. 2 Dear is an interesting story, humorous, at the same time is critical of the administrative system. It throws light on the loopholes of the laws we have in our system. Let us see the story in detail. 2 Dear by Leo Tolstoy, a Russian writer. There was a kingdom called Monaco, near the borders of France and Italy. I'm giving you the story of 2 Dear. Near the borders of France and Italy, there was a kingdom called Monaco. It was a small kingdom. There are about only 7,000 people all told put together in this kingdom. The land of this kingdom, if it is divided, people would not get even an acre per head. But in this kingdom, there was a kinglet. Kinglet means a small king who reigns a small kingdom. So there was a kinglet. He had a palace and courtiers, ministers, bishop, generals, and an army. You know what? It was a small army. There are about 60 men in the army. That big it was. Still, it is an army. He put taxes on people, on commodities like tobacco, spirit, wine. He had a kind of a tax called a poll tax. But the people there drink and smoke as people do in any other countries. There are so few of them who don't do that. But Prince would put them to under the taxes. The king had a special revenue from the gaming house or gaming houses. This revenue comes from the gaming houses, or a typical gaming house which was there only in the kingdom of Monaco. People used to play roulette there. People play whether they win or lose. The keeper of the gaming houses used to get money. He used to pay a large amount of tax share of it to the king. Whoever wins, whoever loses, but the gaming house keeper, or the keeper of the gaming house, would get money, and he would pay the large profit to the king. This type of gaming houses were there elsewhere, but they were stopped. Germans had this type of gaming house, but they stopped them because they did harm to the people. Some of the little sovereigns used to keep the gaming houses of the same kind, but some years ago they were forbidden. The reason why they were forbidden they were stopped because these gaming houses did a lot of harm to the people. A man would come and play, would risk his luck, would spend his money or lose his money, win or lose. Most of the times they lose. Then he would risk money again, because gambling is such a risk. It is also a kind of an addiction that people cannot stop. If he loses, but if he loses, then he will be in despair, hopelessness. Sometimes he would commit suicide, drown himself or shoot himself and die. These type of things were happening in Germany. So they stopped these gaming houses. But who will stop the king of Monaco? There's an interesting king actually. He continued to have these gaming houses in his kingdom. He reigned with a monopoly of the business. So everyone who wants to gamble, everyone who wants to gamble goes to Monaco now. That is an advantage for him. Whether people win or lose, the gaming housekeeper used to get a lot of profit, money. As a result of that, king would get money. The huge amount or the larger profit used to go to the king. Kinglet of Monaco, this is how he earned his money. He knew it was too bad to force people to have tobacco or drink. He knew it was not nice, but he is of the opinion that you can't earn stone palaces by honest labors. You can't become rich overnight through nice ways, through moral ways. It requires some amount of audacity to be rich overnight. You can't earn stone palaces. If you are honestly working throughout, then you may not be able to get or gather all that you could in a very quick time. But he knew that to draw a revenue from a drink and tobacco is also not nice. But he reigned in the money he earned through these ways and held his court in a ceremony with all the ceremony of a real king. If he doesn't really have revenue or money, richness, how could he be called the king? So he had everything a king should have, but all in a small scale. He was called the kinglet or kinglet. Everything was going on well in Monaco until a murder took place. A few years ago, it happened that a murder was committed in the prince's domain in Monaco. The kingdom was peaceful until then, but it happened. The judges assembled because the criminal was found. The judges assembled and they decided to sentence him to death. The law of the land suggested that any such crime should be punished with death penalty. So far, so good, that next they submitted the sentence to the kinglet. The prince read the sentence and confirmed it. You know what did he say? If the fellow must be executed, execute him. He would not go through the proceedings. It means he would not discuss. He is not analyzing the judgment passed by the judges. Rather, second their opinion. With one straightforward sentence, he would say, if the fellow must be executed, execute him. Look at the king. But there was an hitch. There was one hitch there. There was one problem, that they did not have a guillotine for cutting, a machine which is used to cut, slay the head of the criminal. And they did not have the executioner. The ministers considered the matter and decided to address in an inquiry to the French government, asking for them to provide a guillotine machine and an executioner. In return, the French government wrote a letter that the machine and executioner would cost 16,000 francs. This matter was brought to the king. The king did not find it nice. He said, 16,000 francs on this criminal, the wretch is not worth the money to spend on, he said. He asked the ministers, can't it be done somehow cheaper? Can't it be done somehow cheaper, make it little less expensive? 16,000 francs on the criminal is too dear, he said. Because his opinion is that people would not stand spending 16,000 francs on a criminal. It may really create a riot. Per capita income for the people is not even a couple of francs, actually. When it is not a couple of francs, then how would the king spend this much of amount or money on a criminal? So a council was called. All the ministers came together again, discussed. They wrote a letter to the government of Italy, or the king of Italy, because they thought Italian king was a brother monarch for them. They wrote back in reply, said it would cost 12,000 francs. The king felt even 12,000 francs would be too much. He asked the ministers to make it cheaper. He asked them whether it cannot be done through simple ways. They discussed, considered, reconsidered, and they came up with a solution that they thought they want to do it in a cheaper way. Can't you find a soldier who could cut the man's head off? Then they approached the army. General was given all these solutions, but he did not agree. None of the soldiers agreed. They said no. No, because they don't know how to do it. It is not a thing they were or they had been trained in the army to cut a head of a person. Look at the thing. See, there were so many other ways a criminal should have been sentenced. Not necessarily by the law of the land suggested that he must be executed with a guillotine machine or a similar kind of a thing. The cheaper way of doing it would be to use a rope and hang him. But they are thinking too much around it. And they are so intelligent people. They are trying to make something out of it. They are trying to make too much expression of intelligence here. They denied. Army denied. Then what is to be done? Ministers considered and reconsidered and assembled once again. A commission was called and a committee was made, a subcommittee was made. At last, they decided to do the best thing they could do by converting the death sentence into life imprisonment, or one of imprisonment for life. The king agreed again for this. He thought his ministers were brilliant. They came up with wonderful solutions. But there was another problem. They did not have a prison that could really keep a prisoner for a long time. They arranged, however, they managed to find a place for him. The guard had to be kept to watch this fellow now. And there was a problem that how to provide him food. The food was bought from the palace kitchen. All the arrangements were made, kept the prisoner in the prison. The prisoner remained in the prison for about a year until the king came up with a new expenditure in his annual expenditures. That he came up with a new column. More than 600 francs were spent on this criminal and also the guard who could keep him or who could watch him. Ministers thought they were doing wonderful things. But the king now came up with this, that he did not like spending 600 francs on the criminal annually, because the criminal was young, strong, healthy, that he would live for another 50 years without any doubt. So if they are spending 600 francs every year for about 50 years to come, or at least 30, 40 years the criminal lives, and it will be too expensive, too dear for them. He called the ministers and told them they must find some cheaper ways of dealing with the rascal. The present plan, he said, was too expensive. Ministers joined and rejoined and discussed once again. One minister said the fellow has to be made free. He said to reduce the expenses, a guard must be dismissed. Another minister, wiser than him, said, in that case, the fellow would run away. The first minister said, that is the idea. That was the idea. The fellow should run away. So they reported the result to the king of their deliberations. The king agreed. You know what? King agreed. So easy-going king. So easy-going king agreed. And the arrangements were made. The guard was dismissed. We shall have to tell the criminal straight out, the ministers said. They shall tell the criminal straight out, on his face. Look, the guard is dismissed. Now you are free. You can go. Look at the system, how it is working, dear friends. The criminal was told. The minister said, why did you not run away? One of the ministers said, there is no guard to keep you. You could go wherever you like, and the prince would not mind. There was a shocking reply from the criminal. He said he dared not to say the prince would not mind. That's none of his business. But he said, where would he go? He had nowhere to go. They had ruined his character by their sentence. And people now would turn their back towards him. How would people in the society see a criminal or a person who had been to jail and returned? Except for the politicians, the prestige for the politicians would rise after coming back from the jails. But for the ordinary people in the society, people would turn their back towards them. Besides, that he said he had forgotten the ways of earning or working his livelihood. He said they had treated him badly. That was not fair. These are the words of the criminal speaking to the ministers now. They ought to have executed, he said, when they sentenced him for death for the first time. But they changed the death sentence into life imprisonment. Then too, he did not say anything. So there is no question of running away. Again, he said, after a time you took away the guard. I struggled for my food. He said he did not complain even for that. Now they want him to go away. He said, no way, he would not go away. Now there is a big confusion, question, trouble for the ministers. They thought this would solve the problem. But what to do? Council was summoned once again. What course could they adopt now? They had another discussion, reflected, considered, reconsidered, deliberations took place. There is nothing else they could do now. We must get rid of this criminal somehow, they said. They fixed the sum was fixed, that was 600 francs. And this was announced to the prisoner that they would pay him 600 francs per month. Then they should run away. They should leave the prison. Well, the criminal agreed. You know how he agrees? Well, he said, I don't mind, so long as you undertake to pay it regularly, he said. On that condition, I am willing to go. On that condition, I am willing to leave the prison. The ministers agreed. The matter was settled. He received 1/3 of his annuity in advance and left the province, jail, and reached another province nearby and started doing a market gardening by purchasing some land. He came back to this Monaco kingdom every month timely to take his pension, and used to go to the gaming houses, play a game or two, not too many. He is wise now. He's not going to risk all his money in the gaming houses, and went back. He used to go back to his province. This is how it happened. He lived very happily thereafter. He said, thank God I did not commit a crime in the kingdom, in a country where they do not grudge, they do not mind expenses to cut a man's head off or to keep him in a prison for a long time. They would not mind any amount of money they had to spend to execute or keep the criminal in the jail, because punishing criminals will be more important. So they spend any amount of money. But he did not commit a crime in such a country. He committed a crime in such a country that they would grudge, they would mind, they would think too much about the expenses they could spend on a criminal. And he is this is how he is made free. So this is where the story ends. Dear students, in this episode, I am reading the story in detail to you. In our next episode, we are going to have a critical analysis of this story and discuss question answers. Thank you for watching.